All right, welcome to Hunting for Silver Linings for this Wednesday, September 23rd in 2020. Hosted today by myself, Corey Hart of Startup Grind Grand Rapids here in the Great Lakes region of the United States. My colleague George Katsanos is not with us today. He is on site turning around a business, so that must be fun. Anyway, we have our special guest here today, a chapter director, a co-director, TJ Kinion from Orange County, California. Now, we're brought to you by Startup Grind, the world's largest startup community. We have 600 plus chapters in over 125 countries. In Startup Grind, we operate with a mission to educate, inspire, and connect. We do this show because the pandemic has been and will continue to be the great global leveler. And as entrepreneurs, we need to do our very best for our teams, our businesses, and our families. And to do so, we need to be rational, informed, and analytical, and rigorous in our thinking. We also need to learn to control our biases as they emerge in the various circumstances. Of course, we invite everyone to join us live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as we track the intersection of facts, biases, and action through our check-ins with Startup Grind chapter directors, entrepreneurs, and ecosystem stakeholders from around the world. Of course, you can catch the recordings, as most do, online at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids or on the Startup Grind YouTube channel. And no one has a crystal ball, but if we do keep our eyes and ears open and pay attention, we may be able to see around the bend and with some luck, spot those silver linings that are around every cloud. So to help us do that, I'm pleased to introduce TJ from OC, California. Hi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. This is fun. I always love circling around, hearing about what's going on in the startup community. Of course, that's kind of a given, I guess, when we step into the role of directors of local chapters at Startup Grind. But outside of that, it's so easy to get really just neck deep into your own community that the only other way to find out is to just constantly pour through online articles, and then you're missing out on different markets and stuff. And I think we're both aware that, San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, New York really get a lot of the headlines when it comes to startup stuff. So it's cool to hear about what's going on in communities like ours.
Yeah, and I think one of the, we call the pandemic the great global leveler, and one of the nice things that have come out of it is that it's really expanded the global network and trade of ideas, capital, and access. So it's reduced the barriers to access to a lot of things for founders if they can lift their heads out of the suck, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people are still just trying to keep their heads above the mud. So anyway, I do want to, before we get into talking about your particular ecosystem there, I'm curious to learn about you and your background, what you're currently got your hands into. You mentioned something about an incubator or a program, and like how you found Startup Grind.
Yeah. So I am originally from Northern California, actually, small little ag town called Watsonville, which is where most people get their Driscoll's berries or Martinelli's apple juice in the little grenade style, can or kind of bottles. And eventually, decided to go to school on the East Coast because, of course, California is beautiful, but at the same time, it's easy to just end up spending years after year after year because it's so hard to leave. So I went to school out at Boston College, decided after graduating with marketing and finance, I still wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, and worked at a family friend's music venue in Denver, then moved to Nashville, where I didn't pursue a music career. I did a lot of karaoke, but we ended up jumping into the IT staffing world. And so that's kind of where I got my first taste of tech, if you will, and working for 2 years down there before opening up the company's first international office up in Toronto, which was an absolute eye-opening experience from the standpoint of, coming to a new city. And I think a lot of us, and you guys, of course, up near, Canada, are a little bit more familiar with this, but it's really easy to just assume that Canadians are similar and do business like we do. And
They're
it's
just nicer,
very,
right? They're just nicer.
oh,
That's
nicer, friendlier. I like to think of Toronto as a cleaner, friendlier, less crowded New York.
right.
And it was a good experience, a huge learning experience because the company not prepared for the kind of the labor laws in Canada, how a lot of Canadians do business. I mean, a lot of our U.S. Operations are pretty much built on cold calls.
Mhm.
Canadians aren't big fans of cold calls, and so it was fun. But after a while, I realized that it wasn't the right fit for me, and so I ended up taking a little bit of time to travel. And while I was traveling, had an app idea. Decided that instead of paying somebody to build it, not knowing if the proof of concept was there, decided to learn to code myself. And so I ended up moving to Southern California to take coding classes at a boot camp called Learning Fuse, which was the oldest boot camp in California, or sorry, the oldest boot camp in Orange County. Of course, the boot camp industry got kicked off earlier back in 2010. But after graduating, I ended up actually taking a role as the career services director, and that's eventually morphed into a program manager, which is one of those fun catch-all titles. And so that's what led me to Startup Grind. Most of my role became making connections with companies and really doing anything to make it easier for our students to find jobs. And so the first thing I did was tapped into the networking community. And we had a Startup Grind chapter. I want to say it was going from about 2014 to 2016. As you know, running a networking group is not easy. These aren't full-time jobs typically. And so the person who was doing it eventually, it kind of slowly sunset, I guess, if you will, to put it nicely. And while I was at another big networking tech event here, I had a booth for Learning Fuse. Turned to my right, and there was Jessica Acosta, who was getting Startup Grind launched again. And when she told me, about what it was, and the fact that it had partnered with Google for startups, and had this global network, it sucked me in. And so the first couple of events that I went to, they were small. We had about 10 people, and as the year was kind of wrapping up, Jessica asked me to, join the team and to step in as helping her out as a co-director. And, since then it's been an absolute blast. I'd imagine, you enjoy hopping on stage, interviewing, some of these founders and hearing their stories. You get people from all over, and Orange County is a unique space because we do have a tech scene, but at the same time we have a lot of life sciences, and we have a lot of product companies as well. So our founders and our guests tend to come from a pretty wide array of industries and businesses.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. And it's interesting how your professional career is kind of like dipped in and out of talent, like in different aspects. It's really cool.
Yeah, didn't realize. Well, it's crazy because it's kind of in my blood. My dad, started a tech startup company back in the 90s, ended up taking that public. And so whenever we were doing, our drive to the airport, which was about an hour and a half before flying back east, we were talking sports and we were talking business. And so I heard a lot about tech staffing, didn't think I'd be in it by any means. And of course, after leaving staffing, I get pulled back into the career services job search side. And it's been a nice change. I wasn't a big fan of the, kind of the sales numbers driven part of staffing, in which
The recruiting grind is a grind. It's a grind. I mean,
it is.
It's like you said earlier, it's that cold calling, you're developing your leads lists, you're pushing people through like a funnel,
Yep.
You're lucky when you can become like kind of acquainted with somebody. You're like, hey, you're cool.
Oh
Like,
my gosh. That I used to have candidates who I would chat with for like 10 minutes, and I'd be like, we have to find this person a job. He's got 2 kids. He's
yeah,
super
right.
nice.
I know you get sucked in.
Yeah. And I started to have feelings with, these candidates, and they'd be pulling at my heartstrings. And then my manager would be over my shoulder saying, why didn't you talk her down from $15 an hour to $14 an hour? We would have made more money. I go, because she's got 3 kids to feed.
Right.
And that stuff started to add up for me. It's just, I couldn't get past and into that sales mindset of us not helping out the larger community.
And that industry is it's unregulated. It's the Wild West, and unfortunately, it's not to the benefit of the candidates, right? and
Yeah.
sometimes not even to the startups or businesses that are spending a lot of money to have this help. Um, I only know this because I spent about 8 months on a technical recruiting consultancy, developing a marketing department for them late last year, early 2020, until COVID came and just wiped us out. Um,
Yeah. And you
but
know what it's
yeah,
like, people, people ask me what was it like to work at the company. I won't name them because I don't want to throw them under the bus, but I go as Wolf of Wall Street. We were
right.
expected to pick up the phone, nonstop cold calls. When we made a sale, we rang a gong at the front of the office. It was wild and it was a ton of fun, but like you said, there were some good relationships that we built with clients and with contractors. But the majority of it is it's sales at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
everybody is seen as a transaction.
It can be a little smarmy.
Yeah,
But there are some really great players in that, and then
yeah,
especially heads of talent at some of the some of tech's better firms or more well-known firms, like the head of talent over at Atlassian. Like she is like on fire, especially when we talk about inclusion and balance of teams and really driving that. And then unfortunately, it seems like or it seemed to me that the US is really behind in like HR tech, and maybe it's even part of our whole systemic issues with diversity and balance that particular industry in the US is so far behind the rest of the world.
yeah,
We have Canada. You're in Canada. You worked in Canada, Europe, Netherlands specifically, Australia. They're really driving a lot of these innovative technologies that help build balance on teams. So
yeah. No, I think,
I've
and I
always,
think,
I didn't know that industry could be so fun to watch, but it kind of is.
yeah, no, absolutely. And companies are coming to realize that employees are no longer, these cogs as part of a machine. And it's interesting because one of the statistics that always kind of blew my mind was that replacing somebody typically costs anywhere between 150 to 200% of that person's salary.
Mhm.
And so if they're good, you should be fighting to keep them. Whereas a lot of our clients previously would push back on a person who had been working there for 6 months and asked for a $1 or a $2 raise. And you go, do you realize how hard it is to find somebody with this talent who's also going to fit into your culture and your team and the entire process again? And
Yeah.
once again, I think we're seeing a shift in that, which is good. We still have a long way to go. I saw a statistic recently that since 2016, actually, it might have been even further back. The U.S. has always lagged in, work-life balance compared to especially Europe. But we've gone from taking about an average of 20 PTO days to now down to about 16.
Hmm.
There's no question about it. It is glorified to work hard. And unfortunately, that's not sustainable.
Right.
And that's why you now have, these, mental health, issues popping up right and left. You have college students and kids who are putting more pressure on themselves than ever to try to outperform and
Right.
out hustle their classmates. And we're just not built for that, And so it's good that it's being talked about. Now, what's going to need to happen is you need to have the actual change enacted, which is another thing that, of course, we've got going on too, which, social justice. Talking about it's fine, but not making the changes in your diversity hiring or saying, hey, someone else can do this, isn't going to get anything done.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the the students and how in the college life that is just wrought with anxiety now. I had a chance. I was on the Stanford campus last year, and I was looking forward to it because it's something place I've never been.
It's
But
gorgeous too.
and it's gorgeous campus. And as I first you have to walk through a cordon of campers and like a homeless encampment, but then you get to the gorgeous campus.
Yeah.
And then when you're there, instead of like being able to like, oh my gosh, these beautiful lawns and look at all these happy students, like the whole vibe was filled with anxiety and dread. Like
Yeah.
the students are just like not having a good time.
Yeah. No,
My
it's,
parents will kill me if I do not taste this.
Yeah, and part of it is the pressure that parents them, but I think a lot also do with obviously social media and what people are telling themselves other people are doing, or how successful they are. And that's one of the things I think that actually unfortunately, and we encounter this a little bit more with our students learning virtually at the boot camp, is when you're in a classroom environment, you can see people struggling next to you.
Mhm.
Through Zoom, you don't see many people struggling. You might see them go into another room or a breakout room and get some one-on-one help, but you don't know how tough they had it during that one-on-one help. And so we have a lot of students who are putting additional pressure on themselves. And so we have to do more check-ins than we previously were.
Yeah, I've done a lot of talks on like this remote world or whatever, and that one-on-one, like more often reoccurring check-in, just to check in, is so key.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, so I want to get into what we're here to do and talk about. I think we could like spiral into various conversations for hours, I guess. Um, so now, now, I mentioned before I hit record that that one reason why we do this is to dispel stereotype. Now you're in Orange County. Orange County is not LA, right?
It's not, surprisingly not. Even my parents who live in Santa Cruz, the Northern California, they still call it LA. And I get a little bit of a chill. It's tough.
And um, so as far as the ecosystem goes there, and since we're on talent a lot, we can just nip that in the bud here. I'm curious about the talent landscape there. So now, are people like, are they coming through universities in the area and staying put, or are they leaving and coming back? Are people transplanting themselves to Orange County to found companies or to join companies? Like, are they coming in? Are they coming out? And you're like what's going on like with that?
Yeah, it's been
Like,
interesting. So for example, we have UC Irvine here in our backyard, which is over the past, 10, 15 years has just absolutely been on a tear in regards to its growth and its recognition nationally. For the second year in a row, Forbes just ranked it one of the top 10 public universities for value. And with that, you've got some really strong schools. They have a really strong engineering school. They have a really strong, MBA program. And you've got, this ecosystem that's kind of been built beforehand because, Orange County has got quite a few large companies, specifically, in the life sciences area with, you've got Edwards Life Sciences, who's right here in our backyard. There's a ton of med tech plays as well. And then outside of that, you do have a pretty good amount of, finance and insurance. And what's been tough though is it's still not seen as a tech space. And so you have this computer science program at UCI that, is, probably top, 25, top 30, yet most of the students, I believe the number when I last heard it was 75% leave the Orange County area.
mhm.
And so they're either getting scooped up by Silicon Valley or Seattle firms straight out of school, because these places don't want to have to compete with somebody who's graduated. Let's get them into an internship and let's make them an offer that doesn't even make sense for them to go back to school.
Mhm.
And so you saw kind of this, this movement out. We've got some other strong schools. Chapman has a strong engineering school as well. But what it had happened is that you do have some of these people who are leaving. Now, what we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months is former founders who aren't, let's say, young anymore. They've got some, seasoning in the startup space coming back to Orange County to start their second or their third companies. So, for example, Neil Grover, who was the former Buy.com CEO, he's just come back and started another kind of e-commerce media company called Indie, which just raised $9 million. And he's a former UCI graduate, but of course, Buy.com, everything they were doing was, up in the Bay Area. You have, for example, one of the best county was Oculus. And, you've got Palmer Luckey, who Facebook bought Oculus for, I'm not sure, I know it was more than $1 billion. And they just picked up the entire team and brought them up to the Bay. And so what had happened is you, of course, have this, people who have made a ton of money, but they are starting to come back to start, those second companies down here. And part of it is because of the access to talent. And it's slightly an untapped market. One of the crazy things that I always hear too is Orange County has one of the largest concentrations of engineers in the nation. But a lot of them live here and then either drive to LA or drive to, San Diego. It's been slow going, but it is moving, which is good. And then COVID, of course, hit.
Right. And now we don't have to do those commutes. I did spend 6 months doing that San Diego to Irvine commute. And I listened to a lot of podcasts, but it was brutal. Like I don't enjoy my little steel prison,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It wasn't how long you were on the road. It's how many podcasts did you get through?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's like Orange County, LA, Chicago, some of these cities like that. London, Rome. It's not like how far it is, but how long it's going to take me to get there. Could be half a mile. I'll see you in 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, California does not have a very good public transit system, especially, Southern California. You do have a few, if you happen to be in the right area, you can, hop on the train and go from San Diego to Irvine, but it's not the same as the East Coast and not even close to the same as, places like Europe.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting to hear about the talent landscape there, and also the fact that the people are finding the opportunities to come back, to return, and really leverage that to their own advantage. Because they've been there, they've been a product of it, and so they see it, and that's a nice thing to be able to realize and leverage when you're a returning founder. So, now you run a coding boot camp, so that's part of developing talent in the space. I imagine, and see, this is just me projecting my stereotypes on your region. So
let's hear it.
if I have an idea and I'm drawn to, your area, I don't know, because of family or whatever, but I'm there and I have an idea and I want to get started. So I don't have much network, but I do have an idea. And let's say, like I've got some traction, like some sales, things are happening. Now it's time to maybe think about like getting some help with some funds or whatever. What are some barriers? I mean, so talent is not a barrier, like locally, right? So that's not a barrier as long as I know I ask a few people in the ecosystem and I'll find it, right?
Just put a little bit of effort into it. It's not like San Francisco where, you can walk out down to the Starbucks and you just say, I'm hiring an engineer for this, and this, and you got 3 people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, a UX, okay, thank, come this way.
Yeah. Where did you work? Oh, wow. All of the FANG companies. Impressive.
Yeah. Even the homeless dude in the bathroom's like, wait, me. So like, So what is it fairly easy to drive some interest in my idea, to get some people giving me warm introductions, find some investment? Is it, or advisors?
It's actually tough. And one of the things that Orange County doesn't have going for it is the, I guess, kind of the distance between different cities. And, as and maybe this is something actually you hadn't thought too much about, because I didn't realize it until about after a year living here, was Irvine, which is there's no question about it, the tech center of Orange County. There's no downtown. There's no area. I mean, how weird is that?
You've got that shopping center.
Yeah.
They're gorgeous shopping centers.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. You've got 3.2 million people in Orange County. You've got something like 30 different cities, yet, and I heard this on a local podcast down here, which, by the way, if anybody is looking to tap into the Orange County tech scene, you absolutely have to listen to Accelerate OC by Carrie Ransom. And one of the people who, I believe he was running an incubator at one of the local colleges said, when you drive into Orange County, or I mean, from the desert in, you have two signs, LA and beach cities. It's just a beach cities. And so you don't have this area that allows for kind of these collisions to take place. And that's where not only can it be difficult to network, where people typically, may say, a 20-minute drive, I think I'm good. They don't walk out of their office down to, the local event. And so parking is a big, hurdle for us. We have quite a few WeWorks, but dear Lord, are those expensive parking, event. Like you go to an event, you might pay $10 for a startup grind event, but you end up spending $30 on the, 2 hours of parking that you just did. So it's just a little bit more difficult to find than a lot of startup founders. And, as when it comes to raising capital, it is an absolute grind. It is almost a full-time job in itself, in addition to running your company. And so when you go up to, Silicon Valley, even LA has a little bit of an easier time, than Orange County and stuff. You could do a quick Google search, or you could just go, I'll shoot the name of the roads that escaping me. But of course there's it's killing me now that I can't remember it, but they're around every corner. Whereas down here, there's a few large groups. So for example, Tech Coast Angels has over 400 members. They're one of the largest angel investment groups in actually the US, yet a lot of their focus is more on the life sciences side. And so if you're in that space, this is a great spot for you to be. Now, if you're outside of that, you could end up interviewing with somebody over there, because of course there's the application process, and you could end up interviewing with somebody who has no idea about AI or, as we were talking about earlier, HR tech and software. And they're asking you questions about how many patents do you have? And you're like, really? Patents right now? No, I'm trying to grow as fast as possible. By the way, I also don't want to share my secret sauce with all of our competitors. So that's a little bit of a barrier, is trying to find the right people to help you out. So I know that this was, as of last year, 98%, or at least 95, over 95% of the funding that Orange County startups got came from outside of Orange County.
Okay.
So that's one hurdle that we currently have, is getting the access to the capital. Now there's a few groups that are actually starting to change that. A few venture studios, which is kind of that new concept of, not an incubator, not an accelerator, but also not just a VC. And, they really help you build the business. And so there's a few of those that have recently started, had some momentum going before COVID. And then the other big thing that we're lacking in Orange County is media coverage. So for example, when we have a startup grind event, we have some great local, kind of awareness and writers that might come and post something on their own blog or website. But very rarely does LA know what we've got going on, or once again, Silicon Valley.
Well, sure. And even LA has, they have a South LA chapter,
Mm-hmm.
even LA needs, multiple people hanging out, doing their thing. So you touched on a couple times different sectors that are really prevalent in your area. So besides the life sciences, which is really heavy, what other sectors are popular in your region?
Yeah, so there's been a big push recently in cybersecurity. Cylance is, right around the corner. Actually, I can probably see the building from, my window, and they got bought by BlackBerry, last year. And they really changed the game when it came to, how cybersecurity was, kind of approached and tackled. And so, as you know, anytime you have one of these companies that is that large, there's going to be both competition and then supporting companies, in the area. So cybersecurity has been growing a lot. UCI has a cybersecurity program that they put together. There's another small college called Webster University who has a good cybersecurity program. And then with, Camp Pendleton in San Diego in our backyard, you also have these huge defense contracts and potential there to make some partnerships as well. I'd mentioned life sciences. Outside of life science, we've also, mech, which is really going to be a little bit more on, the hardware side.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of companies there. As I mentioned, Tech Coast Angels, 48% of their investment went to life sciences, which there is a lot of money being invested. Once again, it's just, finding those people. And then AI is another big one. So at UCI, I believe it might be either them or University of Toronto has the most AI and machine learning instructors and PhDs in the US. So there's a huge concentration there. And whenever I go to, some of these, networking events and stuff, and especially the ones that are hosted at UCI, I would say about 25-30% of the time, there's an AI component, to it. Now AI is a little bit of a glorified term. At the end of the day, you could a chatbot. At the end of the day,
it's not AI anymore.
Exactly. And then, as I mentioned before, Palmer Luckey, who was the founder of Oculus, is circling back around and has a new, unicorn going called Anduril. And Anduril is a drone, company that has launched actually and landed some big contracts with the government. And, they're using a combination of AI meets, of course, this crazy impressive hardware that they've got going on as well. And then a little bit of fintech as well. So you've got, Acorns around the corner. And gosh, now that I'm thinking about it, within fintech, you have some automotive financing plays as well. With AutoGravity probably being the largest right now.
Sure. So now that's I'm once after we hit stop on the record there, I have a couple of questions as far as some startups here. So like your experience in Toronto is interesting because you and elsewhere is because you understand the importance of like being part of a larger region, right? You can't just like hunker down in your own like your own like little box there. And you mentioned also a lot of collaboration with San Diego in particular, like looking south, not so much maybe LA, but hey, let's it's more San Diego. Is that correct?
There's a little bit. I mean, I think it's nice because we're both, when you think of California, you typically think of San Francisco and LA.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, San Diego is the second largest city in California. So, I think the fact that Orange County, San Diego, are typically seen as vacation spots, surf towns.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Orange County's got obviously the largest employer out here is, I think it's UCI, and then Disney. Disneyland is right, in our backyard as well. And then you've got, the Real Housewives of Orange County. Like, Orange County is almost looked at as a, retirement / vacation community. And, similarly, San Diego gets, overlooked from that side as well. Yet you forget that you have, Broadcom and Qualcomm, and
Right.
then, you've got, Petco that's, based down in San Diego. And so when you look at some of this stuff, when you do a little bit of research, you realize what's there. But if you Google Orange County, it's not going to come up as the number 21, tech hub in the US.
But I think also San Diego and Orange County don't mind being little underdogs.
Yeah.
I spent 10 plus years in Southern California. I just returned to the Midwest here. And so when I was down there, you spoke about work-life balance. I don't know if maybe before we hit record, but I had never worked so hard than when I was in Southern California, but I also never had it as good with the life balance. Like, because, the beach was only 20 minutes away or I made sure it was, like everything. And yeah, so my Instagram was full of sunsets and shit like that. And yes, it was about fish tacos and craft beer and all that thing, and I did work 12 hours a day. And there was I helped an event with at Fort Lauderdale yesterday and for Startup Grind, and the guest, this gentleman is on the Shark Tank program, in Colombia.
Oh, cool.
And he said, and he was like, yeah, one of the questions from the crowd was like, what does your day look like? And I love those questions, it's like, well, sure. Okay. But this guy was
Yeah.
funny. He's like, well, 100% of my time is spent running my company. And then the other 100% of my time is spent raising money. And, and then beyond that, I try to spend at least an hour or two with my family, so it's like, it's 250% of my time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you know, it is easy to escape to the beach or get outside for a hike. I mean, that's been one of the blessings, during COVID, is that, we do still have access to the beach and to parks and to, going out, for a run if needed and stuff. But yeah, it's, there's no question about it. When you're in the startup entrepreneurial space, you can't take it easy unless you're building a lifestyle business, which there's nothing wrong with that. But typically, at least I know in our case, and I'd imagine similarly in Grand Rapids, you're typically talking to founders who are looking to build something big and, make some money with it. But at the same time, employ a lot of people, create a lot of opportunities. I think a lot of people could open up, a small little boutique or, a store. Restaurants, as we know, are really difficult. But you could do something like that and be happy and, take care of yourself and maybe a little bit of money, for your kids and stuff. Maybe not send them, to, one of these schools like Harvard where you're spending $60,000-$70,000, a semester, or not a semester, a year. But at the end of the day, you can create a good life for yourself. But when you're in the startup space, it's nonstop go.
Yeah. So, uh, so you're saying, so what I've learned is that there's some real opportunity for investors to find really great, some hidden gems in your area. And then it's just a matter of like how to find them, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I imagine, and so you also said that, like your Tech Coast Angel group, because of how angel groups are even just organized, that there's a lot of startups that apply that just they don't get through the filters.
Yep.
So there's a lot of crumbs to be picked up. Uh, with as busy as the tech scene is out there, with innovation, people coming back, and the unicorns, are some of these larger corporations, are they looking for people to bring into like maybe acqui-hire type things, or are they driving innovation? Is there a lot of innovation coming out of corporations, not just the universities?
Yeah, there's definitely the conversation going about it. So, that, for example, there's a group out here called the CEO Leadership Alliance, and it's some of the largest companies. For example, another one I'd mentioned, obviously, Edwards Life Sciences earlier, but we've got Experian, in our backyard, which I don't think most people get excited when you hear Experian, because you're thinking, of course, credit report.
Yeah.
But the conversation that I've heard, and talk to people who are part of that group are having, is how to create and foster more innovation and be more involved with the community. There's another large company, Thales, which is in the aviation industry, and they actually have what they termed as an intrapreneurship program. So they do hackathons within their own company. Kelley Blue Book does that as well. And a lot of these companies, of course, are inspiring and encouraging their employees to take chances as well. A local software development agency, Vincent, was actually named one of the most innovative workplaces, or best workplaces for employee innovation, because they encourage employees to take risks, to look at different processes and improvements within their company. And so it's there. It just hasn't come to a community-wide level. So we don't have an Orange County hackathon that gets people thinking about either building their own little company or, trying to solve a problem that maybe could be, addressed in the community. I know LA has got some initiatives going. I was speaking to somebody recently who was part of the DataCon LA organizing staff, and they're now starting a group called Data for Good. And what they're going to start doing is putting together little kind of pods of volunteers that are going to tackle 8 to 12 week initiatives on things like social justice and air quality monitoring and traffic. And it's a lot of it's going to come from the community and the businesses, less so than, of course, the government, where California supports and encourages, development, but they've got on their plate, especially with, the current political landscape. And then, unfortunately, we've been dealing with, a lot of wildfires, which a lot of funds and resources are having to go to that as well. So there is, innovation going on. It just, and I still find myself learning all the time about some of the companies that we have in our backyard. I mean, for example, we both just hosted the pitch battle for Startup Grind, and 3 of the companies that pitched and, were our finalists, I had never even heard of nor seen at some of these other groups. And I'm like, how are they here doing this amazing work, yet just so under the cover? It's been exciting to be part of that. Like you said, it is nice to be kind of seen as a Cinderella story, an underdog, in a community standpoint. But we do have a little bit of ways to go.
Sure. So then, last couple questions here. We touched on this a little bit. Now the Orange County is not necessarily really known for being the bastion of diverse populations,
Yep.
or equity. So what does that look like when startups are building their teams and they want to have, they want to be known for that? So they're trying to fill their board with a nice balanced group of advisors that look like their customer base, that might not look like the population of the area where they live. What are some of the are there any champions, great stories, or are there some challenges that you want to maybe highlight?
Yeah, well, like you said, Orange County is not the most diverse area. You have a very, Caucasian heavy community. You do have a, pretty strong Asian American, community. And outside of that, when it comes to, I guess kind of trying to build, a more diverse board, or, a more diverse company, most companies typically end up having to really make a strong push and initiative to do so. And from what I've seen, it looks like more often than not, they end up actually bringing people in from outside of Orange County,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of fill those seats or, help them tackle that. Now, with that being said, there have been a few groups that have kind of started to pop up and started to kind of tackle this. I know at Startup Grind, we've started featuring a lot more female and African-American, founders and leaders, which, at the end of the day does come down to doing a little bit more legwork to get that done. Because, as we were joking about earlier, with San Francisco and hiring engineers, you can walk into a Starbucks. Well, we could walk into, onto the UCI campus and ask founders who's interested in presenting, and we're going to get 90% of them are going to be either white or Asian American.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to kind of create and foster, obviously, this support network. And once again, I know that that's something that the CEO Leadership Alliance has got, on their plate. When it comes to diversity in companies, the one that really, stands out is Cox Automotive and Kelley Blue Book. And, they've won a few times. Now granted, Cox Automotive is headquartered in Atlanta, but Kelley Blue Book's team out here, for example, their engineering team is actually 60% female, which is absolutely astonishing considering the fact that I believe it's closer to about a 15 to 20% when it comes to, Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of actually the partners that we at Learning Fuse have been most excited to work with. I mean, when I called up the development manager, and said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing a women in tech scholarship," he goes, "We're on board." He didn't even ask a single question.
Right, let's do
And
it.
yeah, and this guy's already got, a team of, that is majority, female engineers. So you're starting to see more of that. You're starting to see, a little bit more, kind of women in, tech and, girls who code and stuff like that. And that's, I guess it's a little easier for me to speak to that because I do see more of it, with the boot camp and that space.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience down in Southern California with with more of like the gender initiatives, especially with tech
Mhm.
in the last few years, and that clearly is and needs to continue to evolve into like even more diversity and balance.
Yeah.
Um, Last thing is,
You hit the nail on the head. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say you hit the nail on the head. We're tech companies are building things. If they have goals of these lofty goals of growing and being global, they're building things for a diverse community, yet their entire workforce is people like myself
right.
and and you. It is white, males who are going in there, and then you wonder why the AI facial recognition has trouble identifying African Americans. You wonder why the once again the automated bot or script in the background associates women with homemaking. Like, and
Mhm.
these are some of the companies. I mean, it's Google making those mistakes. It's Facebook, it's Indeed, and these hiring platforms and stuff. And unfortunately, the mentality of a lot of engineers is, what does the data say?
Right.
Well, the problem is the data is bias.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you need to step out of this zeros and ones to look at the world around you. And luckily, the conversation is happening a lot more. It's going to take a little bit though, because you have to create those opportunities earlier in life for people, where you have young African Americans, young Hispanic kids seeing the potential of going into tech.
Yeah. My favorite data phrase that I love to remind people about comes from like accounting. It's shit in, shit out.
Yeah.
Like, so like, anyway, yeah. So one stereotype that that is easy to fall into is thinking that an ecosystem as robust as Orange County, right? Especially when you are in California, which is, its economy is larger than the economy of Great Britain.
Fourth largest in the world. Orange County, I believe, is 35th largest GDP in the world.
Yeah. So, coming from like speaking to like someone like yourself in that area, we might be able to project on you saying, "Oh, you know what? These guys are fine. They don't need anything. They're sorted. Like whatever."
Yeah.
Um, but it's still important to ask, what can the global startup grind community do for you? What can we do for TJ? What can we do for your coding boot camp? What can we do for your chapter?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Corey, and I think that was one of the reasons I actually got so excited about Startup Grind, was having the value of ask how you can help before asking. And I recently, I don't know if you're familiar, if you've seen an invite for this yet, but Lunch Club is this new kind of networking startup that's getting going on. And anytime I have a meeting, it's I don't even know what I can do for you, but let me ask, so at least I can kind of keep an eye out. And it's amazing how far it goes. Well, specifically with the boot camp, we're always looking for companies to hire, our graduates, whether it's, a front end development role, UX, UI, full stack development. They are extremely passionate. They've put their life on hold. And this isn't somebody who you might have to handhold and say, hey, here's when you show up on time, because they're 20, and they're still learning how to be an adult. These are former professionals. I mean, we have a gentleman who left a secure 10-year career as an accountant and decided that wasn't his passion. He loves to code and problem solve. So if anybody's hiring, got developers who are willing to do that. We actually have some that are working with a person and a consultant out in Australia right now. So they can do it. They love, there's a lot of them are night owls. And then with, in regards to supporting the Orange County community, as we had, mentioned before, access to capital is something that can be a little bit difficult for some of the founders in our area to be able to do. And to constantly, raise is difficult. But at the end of the day, once again, we do have a pretty good amount of momentum going, which is exciting. But really just kind of reaching out and continuing to connect and look at, some of the talent in the area as well. because, once again, we would love to keep more of those engineers from UCI in the Orange County ecosystem. A lot of economists have done the data, and when you have one innovation job, it creates 5 service level jobs. And that's one of the easiest ways to grow and to support a sustainable community.
Sweet. Great. Well, I'm really grateful for the generosity of your time today.
Yeah, no worries.
Really fun conversation. Orange County is a spot that I've spent some time in, but usually just it's kind of like a flyover region.
It is.
And I'm almost like just trying to get out of it, right? To get to LA. It's like, how fast can I get
Yep.
through this?
Yeah, you look at flights and you're like, oh, I could save some money by flying into John Wayne instead of, LA.
Yeah. But you guys do have especially those beach communities, like unbeatable experiences, food, some balance and stuff like that. So anyway, look forward to seeing you again, maybe at Global or who knows when we can do stuff in person again.
Yeah.
And then anything that we can do for you, because we are connecting through this program. I've connected with almost 60 different directors from around the world. So if you are doing anything that is looking for some of that international collaboration or flavor, or you have anyone in your community that's looking to get introduced, like warm introductions to people around the planet, different markets or whatever, I'm happy to help with that. So I'll let you get to the rest of your morning. Got you up nice and early, so now you have you're gonna be extra productive today, right?
I think so. I do hope so. We're revamping our curriculum, and we're actually, one of the things with most coding boot camps and people who go to a program like this is the job search is the hardest part, and so we're actually introducing an entire week of just career services and application focused kind of workshops and stuff. So that's going to be most of my afternoon, revamping that, and outside, connecting with students, making sure that they feel supported and know that at the end of the day, when it comes to, and if anybody's listening who is looking for a job, the 2 best things you can do are to network and connect with people, because 70% of jobs that are filled each year are never posted publicly.
Right.
And then on top of that, continue to stay active. So keeping the momentum moving, there's nothing worse than stopping your job search and losing all of that momentum, even when it feels tough.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So TJ, thanks again.
It's been awesome, Corey.
Cheers. Good to meet you.